Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 800. Quite a milestone. We've had a bunch of these. And so yeah, it's always good to see a new milestone. I knew when I started following this story, I knew it was going to be probably 2-3 years. So I'm not surprised that we're at day 800. I certainly expect it will surpass day 1000 here in the not too distant future. So we're talking what about 6-7 months. That put us in about what it put us about November or so. We'll hit the 1000 mark, and I think we'll definitely get there. I do expect by the time we get there, we are going to start to we'll probably be in the process at that point. My guess is that by then the investigation will be close to being wrapped up, or certainly the first part where we identify who did what. Of course, it'll take a year, maybe 2 years for all the legal processes to take place. But I think by the time we hit video 1000, we're going to be well into the prosecution phase, or at least beginning the prosecution phase for the crimes committed by the deep state in the Spygate coup. So anyway, it's a milestone, day 800, and it's awesome for a lot of you. A lot of you have been with me for almost since the beginning. So it's a milestone for all of us, really, staying with this story and never letting go of it, because we knew at the very beginning, I certainly did, that if, like I said on video number 1, if Trump's claims that he was wiretapped by the Obama administration turns out to be true, this is going to be bigger than Watergate. That's why I started following the story, and I've never let go of it. So anyway, thanks to everybody for sticking with me throughout this, and I think we're definitely on the downside of this and headed toward justice. So it is June the 2nd, 2019, Sunday. Another note before I get started on the news of the day is yesterday morning, Saturday morning, I contacted by email the office of the Attorney General, William Barr, and I just sent him a short note that I saw his appearance on Fox News, where he talked about having lots of questions, and that questions were not being answered, were not satisfactory to him at this point. And so I sent him this email and let him know that about my timeline. I left him a link to my timeline and explained to him that I think if he'll go look at my timeline, that he will have a lot of his questions answered. But it may also probably create some more questions for him to ask. But I think if he would go through my entire timeline, the entire coup plot is laid out there, and I cite all my sources. And so I do hope that now I know that he personally probably doesn't get these emails, that they go to the public relations for the DOJ. But I did make clear in my email that I was addressing this to the Attorney General himself. I realize he's busy, but quite honestly, if he wants to really get the full grasp and understand all the events that took place beginning all the way back in 2007, which is where the origins of this are, and he says he wants to get to the origins, we need to go back to 2007 to be at the origins of the Spygate fiasco. And I do believe if he'll go through my timeline, when he gets done, he will have a lot clearer picture of exactly how all this got started and how we got to where we are today. And who knows, maybe he watches my videos, I don't know. Maybe Trump watches my videos, I don't know. I have no way of knowing. I know that one of the producers for Sean Hannity watches my show. Okay, so let's move on to the news of the day. Tom Fitton. He says that Glenn Simpson was asked if he communicated with the rotten Reverend Clinton or her campaign directly on the information he was gathering as part of the opposition research that he was putting together for her. According to Tom Fitton, Simpson refused to answer that question. Simpson refused to answer the question as to whether or not he was communicating directly with the Right Reverend Clinton in regards to the information he was collecting while putting together his opposition research. Why do you think the Right Reverend Clinton, or why do you think that Glenn Simpson did not want to answer that question? If he had not been communicating directly with the Right Reverend Clinton while putting together the dossier, then why wouldn't he just say, no, I never spoke directly to Hillary Clinton or her campaign or anyone like that while I was working for her, putting together the dossier? No, he wouldn't say that. The fact that he would not come out and say that tells us that he probably was. That's why he refused to answer the question. Once again, there's still, when you look at this right now and the way this is being still playing out in the media, they're behind us. Remember, we're ahead, way ahead of the mainstream. Even Fox News, we're way ahead of these people. They still are trying to figure out how all this was coordinated together. How did they get the NSD, the FBI, these intelligence agencies, the State Department, the DOD, how did they coordinate all this together to pull off this scam, this hoax, this Spygate criminal conspiracy? Because right now, just like you have a lot of moving parts, but they seem to all have been moving in unison, and there still seems to be confusion by a lot of people, unfortunately, as to how all this was coordinated. And so if they would start digging into John Brennan's task force, they would understand that that is why that was set up. It was set up to coordinate how to cultivate these lies, and then how to pipeline them into the agency that could conduct the investigation, that being the FBI. But they needed a host. They needed a host who could look presumably as unbiased or not involved. So you had all these other agencies that were involved, so they needed some agency to remain uninvolved on the outside so that they could be the ones who unwittingly could have the information pipelined through them. And that is why the State Department was left out of the multi-agency task force. The other 6 agencies involved in this, where the coordination was to cultivate all this and propagate this and coordinate all this, then they used the State Department as the pipeline. So once they discovered the multi-agency task force, which we discovered here on TowerGate about a year and a half ago, once they discover that, it will all become clear to them who was coordinating this, how it all was coordinated, and how this entire scheme was planned and then executed. So they'll get there. They're just unfortunately behind, and that's why I hope Attorney General Barr actually reads my timeline, because if he does, he will no longer wonder how all this was coordinated or by whom. And a lot of people want to still point to Obama, and certainly Obama was he was one of the very few people that was kept abreast of the activities of the multi-agency task force, the special task force by John Brennan, and we have more evidence of that today in another story I'll be covering here in a few minutes. But what is still not 100% clear to a lot of people, it is pretty clear to me, is what they're trying to find is how to connect all these different agencies and all these different people and organizations and agencies and things that were all working together. And still they want to try to find, obviously they're looking now at any type of solid link or evidence that would show that Obama and his people, cabinet level people in the Obama administration, were aware of what was going on, but not just maybe aware of it, but were possibly part of the central planning group that was running the operation. And I think that at this point, you still don't hear a lot of people looking at the Clinton connection to all this, but I think that they're missing a huge part of this story, because there's obviously a huge connection, a major connection between Hillary and all this Spygate stuff. And if you go through my timeline, or if you've watched many of my TowerGate videos, I've presented, I think, substantial evidence that the Right Reverend Clinton was a guiding principle in the execution, the planning, and the execution of the coup. And so I think it's just a matter of time before all these dots are connected, and we will see that it was really being run from the top, primarily by the Rotten Reverend, Obama, and John Brennan. They were the top three principals, and then under them you had the various other people like the Strzok and Page and Brennan and Priestap and Clapper and all those. But I would put the three principals of this operation to be the Rotten Reverend, Obama himself, and Brennan. And I think when we get to the bottom of this kettle of fish, this rotten kettle of fish, I think that that's where we're going to get. And remember, the fish always rots from the head down. Alrighty. Well, we have the sociopathic former director of the Federal Bureau of Insubordination, the former communist, James Comey, tweeting again. Yesterday's tweet was as follows: Bill Barr on CBS offers no facts. An attorney general should not be echoing conspiracy theories. He should gather facts and show them. That is what justice is about. Yes, we need Comey to tell us what justice is all about, don't we? Maybe he should go back and watch his press conference where he exonerated the Right Reverend Clinton for multiple violations of the Espionage Act. I mean, literally probably a dozen separate crimes there: obstruction of justice, destroying evidence, abuse of power. You can just go right down the list. And that's just regarding the emails. That doesn't even include all the other shenanigans she's involved in. Comey laid out her crimes and exonerated her. She knowingly set up a private server at her house that was unencrypted, that was unsecure, I should say. And, of course, we know from the CIA's IG that he reported that the Chinese were living on her server in real time, getting it all. We know that she had at least 22 SAP special access programs on her server, which the Chinese have now read, along with probably everybody else on the planet. These are programs so secret the government does not even admit they exist. Yes, all the crimes of the Rotten Reverend Clinton and completely exonerated by the dubious, dumbass former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, now telling Bill Barr what justice is all about. Now, I've always thought it's a really good idea not to poke a bear with a stick in the eye. And that's what he's doing here. He's poking Barr in the eye with a stick. Not a good idea, considering that AG Barr right now is investigating Comey and his friends for their crimes. And my guess is Barr has seen this tweet. He can't be very happy about it. Comey's nuts. If Comey was smart, he'd shut the hell up and prepare to make a plea deal or beg for forgiveness or throw himself at the mercy of the court or something. I mean, this guy's just delusional, man. He obviously just, in his mind, is convinced that he's above the law. He's too connected to the power structure. He's SES, and therefore he doesn't feel to ever be held accountable. I would not bet against AG Barr in this matter. I don't think he came out of retirement to play tiddlywinks with Jim Comey. He says Bill Barr on CBS offers no facts. Well, he's in the middle of an investigation. Of course he's not going to reveal the facts of his investigation, but many of the facts are already out there, Jim. And just from what we have in the public domain, I've lost track of the lies and crimes that you've committed. Jim, I could do an entire 30-minute video on just the lies and the crimes that you've committed. It's a long list, Jim. And that's why you're going to prison. Stretch. He says that the AG should not be echoing conspiracy theories. Well, I think right now he's formulating a conspiracy hypothesis. And he has enough raw evidence to have concluded that there is some kind of a conspiracy that went on, a conspiracy being two or more people engaged in a crime or the planning of a crime. I think that those facts are pretty clear from just what's in the public domain. But I do believe he is going to connect the dots, gather all the facts, come to a conclusion about what happened in 2016, 2017, and even actually started before that. And when he does, I believe he's going to find Comey is one of the key top players, probably one of the top 5 key players involved in the coup. And a lot of people were kind of bent out of shape because Barr walked back the phrase or the term or the word when he was asked about treason. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, no, Barr does not want to use the word treason right now. I wouldn't use the word treason. If I were interviewed on CBS, I wouldn't use the word treason. It's you're setting yourself up for something you don't, it's not wise. It's not a wise thing. Plus, if you want to get down to the technical definition of something like that, treason is generally associated with a military overthrow of the government or a violent overthrow of the government. So we didn't really have sort of a necessarily military or violent overthrow. It was more of a silent coup, attempted silent coup. I think coup is certainly a word that would maybe appear and at some point, and Barr may use a word like that, but I think he's going to avoid using those types of words. It's not necessary. It will have no bearing on the eventual end of things, but I certainly think that the word that Barr is most concerned with, and the word that obviously is going to be eventually is going to come into play when he finishes up his investigation, is the word conspiracy. There was a criminal conspiracy, and that functions in a lot of ways like a coup or a treasonous act or sedition or something like that, without all the other stuff that goes along with just the words that are generally, the idea is generally associated with those words. He can be just as effective at laying out using the simple terms criminal conspiracy, and that's more the legal term, and I believe that that's probably the term we can expect Barr to use when he finally gets the investigation complete and he summarizes what the investigation is all about. And I think at that point we are going to hear him use the phrase criminal conspiracy. Matt Gaetz was milkshaked in Pensacola. Well, they've been milkshaking these European politicians, particularly in the UK. They got Farage about 2 weeks ago. And it looks like they're going to carry that tradition over here to the US. Now, I'm not sure what they do to you in the UK when you milkshake somebody, but when you milkshake somebody in the United States, that's considered battery. So it looks like the person who assaulted Gaetz with the milkshake was Amanda Kondryev. And she has now been arrested and charged with battery. She has been charged with battery. Yes, she has been charged with battery. And just so you know, she was Matt Gaetz' opponent in his last congressional race. She was his opponent, his Democratic opponent. So I guess she's mad that she lost. She knows she can't beat him any other way, so she's going to throw a milkshake at him. Very well done. I'm sure he went and changed his shirt, and he's doing fine. She's going to be charged with battery, which means she's probably going to do a little jail time and pay a pretty hefty fine. It'll be on her record for the rest of her life. Not something you want on your record. It's considered a violent crime. It will definitely have an impact on everything from credit to getting a job and everything else. So she didn't do herself any favors, and Matt Gaetz is smiling and moving forward. What a dumbass. She could probably be a candidate for Dumbass of the Week if you want to write that name down. It's Amanda, and her last name is spelled Kondratyev. Kondratyev, however you pronounce it. She's now been charged with battery for milkshaking Congressman Gates. Obama was speaking in Canada, and he said that the Trump era is like the Dark Ages, and he described Trump as the strong man. Wow, you talk about just getting it 180 degrees wrong. No, actually, the years of Obama were the Dark Ages, and all of that is about to be revealed here very soon, and his legacy is going to be absolutely destroyed. And the only way he stays out of jail is two things. Number one is if Brennan and Clapper and Comey fall on the sword and tell us all that Obama didn't know what they were doing, or they could do the opposite and implicate him, but he still probably would not go to jail because I assume Trump would pardon him. We generally don't send former presidents to jail, but we'll send everybody else to jail. But his legacy will be absolutely destroyed, and we'll learn that the Dark Ages of government tyranny occurred under him, and that in fact Trump is the guy shining the light of truth on the rats like him, and that we will look back on history just as we did back in the 17th century following 300 to 400 years of tyranny. We will look back as the Trump era being like the second Renaissance, or the original, the first American Renaissance, following the period of tyranny by the deep state and their principal, Barack Hussein Obama. Federal prosecutors are defying Judge Emmett Sullivan's order to release the Flynn Kislyak phone call. The feds have also refused to admit that they had a FISA on Michael Flynn. They certainly did. We know 4 people had FISAs on them. Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Papadopoulos, and Carter Page all had FISAs on them. We expect there could be more. We know national security letters were issued on Trump's entire team almost, including Kushner, Manafort, and others. So that's that. We also know from this court hearing, according to Tom Fitton, that when Judge Sullivan asked the prosecutors in this case whether or not the Flynn Kislyak phone call, that phone call revealed any lie or any crime that was committed by Flynn in the phone call. And the FBI or the federal prosecutors told Judge Sullivan, no, there was nothing on the phone call with Flynn or Kislyak where they would indicate where he had committed a crime. It was what he said after the phone call in his interview is where they found the crime, which was, I guess, a lie or what have you. So anyway, the federal prosecutors are refusing the judge's order to release the Kislyak-Flynn phone call. I expect it'll eventually be declassified, and we're going to get it anyway. And it's going to show that Flynn, just more evidence that Flynn was set up, because it was this phone call that Sally Yates said when she was being interviewed by the Congress, questioned by the Congress, which she said it was after this phone call was listened into, because they had a FISA on Flynn, is that when they immediately rushed and got together and they decided to move forward on a Logan Act violation. So that's when they moved to set him up and then actually get the Logan Act violation. And Sally Yates, of course, is going to be going to jail as well. So that's that. Also, let's keep in mind, at some point they're going to start asking a real serious question. You know, keep in mind, Michael Flynn was the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he was the incoming National Security Advisor. And they put a FISA on him. Now, you put a FISA on someone like that, you better have some damn good evidence. And they don't. They do not. They absolutely do not. Former Obama officials are still meeting with Iran to advise them on how to defeat Trump's foreign policy. This according to Jack Posobiec. Yes, we know that. We just had Mike Pompeo say that he was just over at the UN, and there was former Obama administration officials meeting with the Iranians and advising them on techniques they could use to defeat Trump's foreign policy measures and measures taken by the State Department as well to deal with Iran. This is an actual violation of the Logan Act. And of course, we know that John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, has made multiple overtures to the Iranians to tell them on how to fight back against Trump. And in fact, we learned even more a few days ago, and I don't even know if I even had a chance to cover this on TowerGate, but apparently what they did was they had a bunch of Democrat, former Obama administration officials go sit in on congressional hearings to gather information, and then they took the information they gathered from the congressional hearings, passed it on to John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, and then Kerry went over and passed that on to the Iranians. They need to lock his ass up. Lock him up. A closer analysis of the timeline of events overlaid with the comments by Peter's Been Stroking Us and Loose Lisa Page indicate that the counterintelligence operation known as Crossfire Hurricane may have been opened because of Trump's joke about the Russians getting the Rotten Reverend Clinton's 33,000 emails. If you remember, Trump's making a joke at a campaign rally. He says, yeah, everybody's looking for Hillary's 33,000 emails. Hey, Russia, if you can find those 33,000 emails, I'm sure the media would be very interested. It appears that that comment may very well be the actual reason that Peter's Been Stroking Us fired up that Operation Crossfire Hurricane. And if that turns out to be true, that son of a bitch is absolute. Well, he's already going to jail, but you add some more years on for that, because that is a flat out beyond abuse of power. That's insane. We have Madame Botox telling an audience in San Fran that the investigations into Trump will continue until they have an ironclad case of his crimes and cover-ups, and that Trump will be held accountable for his actions. She's completely delusional, has no idea what's going on right now. As they're trying to put this all together, which is going nowhere, it's a complete joke. They're only putting this out there to feed their base, to keep those donations coming in. But here in the not too distant future, certainly before the next elections, the entire deep state plot and the role of the Democratic Party is going to be outed in this, and this party is likely going to be extinct by 2020. Aaron Klein from Breitbart says that Biden was involved very early on in the Spygate conspiracy. In this article, he lays out a lot of detail, and at some point, about halfway down the page in this Breitbart article by Aaron Klein, he goes into discussing the multi-agency task force. He says that the multi-agency task force was a super secret task force set up by John Brennan and Obama. First I've heard of that. He said it functioned as a sealed compartment hidden from the rest of the intelligence community. He says the task force reported to Obama and a small group of senior government officials, which initially was Clapper, Mr. Potato Head himself, Lynch, who claims not to have any knowledge of any of this, and Comey. And then he said the group was eventually expanded to include Joe Biden, John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, along with Ash Carter. So the multi-agency task force was super secret, functioned as a sealed compartment hidden from the rest of the intelligence community. They reported first to Obama and a small group of senior government officials, Clapper, Brennan, Lynch, and Comey, and that was later expanded to include Biden, Kerry, and Ash Carter. Damn. Well, that little presser that Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, gave a couple of days ago is now coming back to bite him in the ass, just as I predicted it would. So after that, as you know, I was pretty angry that day. I spent about 20 minutes on the drive-by press conference, and I said that there was two things that Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, was trying to accomplish in that little presser. The first one was to provide the fodder that Democrats would need to give them that push to begin their impeachment hearings. But the second thing, and I think the most important thing to him that he wanted to accomplish, was to make clear that he had no interest in testifying in front of any committees. Basically saying, hey, my testimony is my report and I have nothing to add to it. And I basically don't have any plan on commenting on this any farther. And I said, well, you know, he may not have any plans, but that's not up to him. That's up to the Democrats. And they are literally stupid enough to bring him in front of a congressional committee. Now, I'm sure they're not, that if they try that, and it appears that there are several Democrats now saying just that, they're saying, hey, it's not up to Uncle Bob whether or not he testifies to our committee. It's up to us. If we ask him to come and testify voluntarily, and if he chooses not to, then we can always subpoena him. And then you've got Jerry Nadler, that nutcase, the Penguin. We have the Penguin saying that he would strongly consider subpoenaing Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, if he doesn't want to come testify voluntarily. Now, obviously what's going to happen here is Nadler is too stupid to figure out that the last thing Uncle Bob wants is to sit there and be shredded by all those guys in the House Judiciary Committee. So obviously Uncle Bob is going to have to contact someone much higher up the food chain than Jerry, who can then communicate to Nancy Pelosi that Uncle Bob wants you to know that if you really want to screw things up and really make yourselves look even worse and possibly blow the lid off this whole damn thing, you force Uncle Bob in there. Because, you know, while you Democrats may throw softballs at him and let him basically say, I'm not going to answer that, or I'm not going to answer that, I'm not going to answer that, read my report, I'm not going to answer that, I can't recall, I can't remember, all that kind of crap. That ain't going to happen when they get to the Republicans, because they're going to start asking other types of questions that, such as, when did you know that there was no evidence that Trump colluded? How did you determine that Mr. Misfit was a Russian agent? Did you ever investigate that? And on and on and on. So it will be made perfectly clear to Pelosi that if they bring Uncle Bob in, not only will it destroy his credibility and make him look like a damn fool, it will further deepen the shit, we'll say. Well, let's use a better word, kimchi. It will further deepen the level of kimchi that the Democrats are in already. And it will only get worse if they bring in Uncle Bob. That's the point they'll try to get across to Nadler, but he's a blockhead. He is the Penguin, and he's so hell-bent on everything that I don't know that he'll listen. He may go ahead and defy Nancy Pelosi, but we'll have to find out how stupid this man actually is. But yeah, I'd love to see Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, sitting there getting his ass grilled, and I would love to be one of the people asking the questions. Oh my goodness gracious. Finally, the government has admitted that UFOs are real and that they in fact have debris from them. And I believe they're probably talking about the Roswell debris. Years ago, I did a very, very deep dive and wrote an actual report, about a 200-page report on everything about Roswell. I'm absolutely convinced that something happened in Roswell, and I'm thinking it was something having to do with extraterrestrials. I do believe that they captured not only debris, but possibly some of these aliens themselves. As many of you know, my grandfather was a full-bird colonel, retired from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He told me they have a super secret building up there, totally under 24-hour guard, and it's not necessarily even, it's not even a rumor. It's pretty well known by a lot of people who've been up there for a long time what was in that building, and it has something to do with aliens and alien debris. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.